Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, and as usual, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Anarchist Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
I'm definitely doing, man. I'm doing well. We are here to talk about dragons minus the dungeons tonight for our topic. Which obviously, I think if you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, it's one of those things that's like near and dear to your heart. It's right in the name of the game. But sometimes it feels like we don't fight that many dragons, and sometimes it feels like we fight too many dragons.
Well, I have to say that having gone through recently trying to clean up and organize all of my well, maybe not all of my minis, but trying to organize the gaming space, and that does involve minis. I realize I have a lot of dragon minis. Now, mind you, it's not too much; it's just a lot. And you are correct. I don't feel that we do a lot of fighting of dragons, and I think part of the element is because um, there is a general view of what dragons are, and I think and this is my main talking point is dragons don't necessarily have to be taken at its core like D&D says that they are. Like there are powerful lizards and powerful reptiles that are out there, but like take the Tarask. It's a gigantic monster, but it's dumb as dirt. Like it's stupider than you really can make a PC. Um, so you could literally strip out the personality and the strength of intelligence, wisdom, charisma of dragons, and use the majority of the rest of the stat block and have them be more like um, I know it's not Breath of Fire, but
Rain of Fire, you're thinking
Rain of
of.
Fire. Breath of Fire was a video game that I loved, but Rain of Fire, where they're engines of destruction, not so much the tactical superior geniuses, and you could have worlds where some dragons are intelligent, some dragons are not, and it really takes knowing your shite to know the difference. So, how do you want to play it?
Right. I mean, you could do like a Drake version of the dragons, except for these are Drakes on steroids because they get just as big. Yeah, I feel like in my games, I don't use dragons as much out of like a reverence and respect. Like, to me, fighting and killing a dragon should not be like going into a goblin warren and taking out the goblins. It should feel special. And the problem with dragons, too, is solo monsters in D&D suck, right? Like, let's just say it, solo monsters in D&D suck. They're not exciting combats, and they usually get whomped by your players, especially if they're matched up kind of close
Right.
to where they should be, without a lot of extra work from the DM. It's just not. Solo monsters have always struggled in this game, and you always have to do something extra. You have to have minions or traps or hazards or things to really make your dragon shine, or they're just kind of easy in comparison.
So, I mean, we know we've got lair actions and legendary actions and reactions, which allow you the big boss monster, and in this case, dragons, to be able to do more, and those are great. With Theros, we now have these mythic capabilities, and if you want to design a dragon that has gone above and beyond the typical, dragons need to survive, perhaps they've undergone some kind of arcane or scientific research, or a combination thereof to gain this mythic trait and prolong that nasty fight even farther. These are all possibilities that are fun and within the current rule spectrum of D&D. But it does come down to that point that it is typically a solo monster, and the action economy is just not there. um, I know with some of the boss fights that I've done, again, not dragons, but could be followed suit, I've altered the number of legendary actions it has based on the size of the group. A lot of times, you find them, oh, it's got three. All right, well, what if you gave them four or five? Because there's, six or seven members of the party. All right, now it's able to hit more often, But when this happens, that's making the turn take that much longer. So more, static hazard type things are worthwhile. So maybe give it a secondary lair action, so it goes off at 20 and 10 that affect everything that's in the area that doesn't bother the dragon because he lives in that.
Yeah, I mean, or you could do things like, it's a red dragon or a gold dragon, so their lair is lava, right? So there's limited places to stand as a player, and being knocked into lava is a huge issue. And maybe you don't do, like, instant dead, but you do, like, oh, we're going to roll 10 die 10 damage dice for every round you're in here. Unless you're immune to, fire damage, Or, if you're in a silver dragon or a white dragon's lair, there could literally be a underground frozen lake or lake of ice, and, that isn't quite frozen through, so, like, oh, your fighter wearing plate mail just went in the drink, now he's got to get out of there, and he's got to, he's making saving throws against exhaustion every round.
Yeah.
Because it's cold. But, like, it's almost like you got to be a dick, right? And you got to do these cheesy things. They're not cheesy because that's kind of the things that would happen. But at the same time, to the players, it might kind of feel like, or what if, they're dragons, right? So, like, at one point of the lair, they set up, like, false stalactites, right? So instead of attacking, they smash them so they fall on the players that are in that area, and it becomes like an area effect hazard or trap. So I feel like you just got to be really creative or use minions.
But all of that, comes down to you've got this superior foe who is paranoid enough by lore. Dragons are worried about adventurers and evil things, coming to kill them, take their treasure, what have you. So you want to do them justice. So as the DM, when I'm sitting, behind that screen, part of me, feels like I'm on the fence. I like to produce a challenging encounter, but my goal as a DM is to provide a fun, interactive story, not to just decimate, destroy, and obliterate my players. But that's what dragons would want to do, and they're really smart. They've got the time to set up and get these things going. So, like, unless you've got, hey, well, this group of adventurers just went in and failed, and the dragon has to reset traps and what have you, now's the time. Like, okay, that works once. Like, you can't keep doing that stuff unless, like, you get like you use money and whatnot to build these magical disguises and set up hey, we're gonna have this quest to go kill a dragon who wants lots of money. Like, you the players would have to come up with this story of how they're gonna dupe adventurers into going into this dragon's lair.
I don't know if that's necessarily a good action.
No, it's not. Like, that's the only thing that I can think of that would, possibly have less things.
I'm just thinking of an adventure where the actual adventure is being the quest giver to other adventurers to go invade the dragon's lair first because you want them to soften up the defenses. And maybe, like, you give them a minor magic item that you use to scry on them to see how far they get, to see how many groups of adventurers you have to send. Oh my god! I remember, like, my first like dungeon master. We, like, pestered him because we wanted to fight a dragon, and I guess, like, that kind of informed how I feel about dragons. And, like, I remember, like, the battle opened up with the dragon rearing up and flapping its wings, and the hoard of gold and treasure it was on just began to, like, whirlwind around the room, and literally we were attacked by the treasure first. We were getting pelted with coins and precious gems and other things, and the dragon hasn't really done anything yet because this is back in 2nd edition. There were no legendary actions, and the rules were a little a little looser. We're like suggestions.
Fast and loose with what the capabilities were.
Yeah, so so we like got hampered in all these penalties, and the treasure is shifting under our feet before we can even get to the dragon, and like to me, like the way he did it, it was super epic, and that's how I feel like a dragon fight should be. But I've used dragons against you guys in the past, and it's like, yeah, 2 rounds, it's over, and and that partly or mostly because I didn't do any of those dick moves that I probably should have.
I mean, it's a tough decision. It's a fine line to walk, and what side are you going to jump to when push comes to shove? Brian's comment is, like most modern players don't really think player death is enjoyable. I think with more of the awareness and availability of getting GMs, that antagonistic GM was a little bit more common. But because we didn't have the internet, decades ago, we didn't have the ability to easily find groups. You gamed with whoever you could, and you learned and dealt with whatever the options were. And I mean, yeah, I had several different gaming groups, through scouts, and then through, when essentially I found, you and Steve, and that whole group. It was very different levels of thinking, very different, play styles. But I mean, we gamed for a long time and saw a variety of different styles, and I never felt the desire to do as Steve did. Maybe I was ahead of the time, or maybe I'm just not as cutthroat. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But it's one of those things that there's so many people who started in first and second that death was just a standard process of the game, especially when you were going up against these high level monsters. And if the death was memorable, if it was a really awesome experience, it didn't hit as hard as my dude fell off a wall and died. Yeah, that's not all that funny.
So a minor tangent to go off on here,
Sure.
right? So I don't think 5e breaks down the stats like they've been done in previous editions, where it's like what the numbers actually mean. Because Doug mentions that Red Dragon only has an 18 intelligence. Now in previous editions, I believe like an 18 was a genius level intellect, right? And 19 and 20 was a super genius. Beyond that, you're getting to godlike intellects. I think when you combine an 18 intelligence with a creature that has lived hundreds of years, if not thousands of years of experience, I feel like for like an 18 intelligence for a dragon that's been around for a couple of millennia is different than an 18 intelligence for a human.
Also look at combining the intelligence, the wisdom, and the age. I think all of that enters into it as well, because being intelligent but not very cunning, not super useful. But if you've got an 18 intelligence and a 16 wisdom, that means you've been around the block. You're smart enough to be able to enact, and cunning enough to come up with ways to really make it hit hard. And I was trying to find my monster manual and not pull up D&D Beyond here on the.
We're looking at 18 intelligence for Ancient Red, 15 wisdom, 23 for charisma. So maybe the Red Dragon should just seduce you. Hey, baby, that sword is really shiny.
Well, how else are you gonna get those half dragons, man?
You gotta get them somehow. So there is that as well.
It's like also worth mentioning. It's still one brain the DM against 3+ other brains. The dragon has time to plot, plan, and contemplate, and think about how much time you spend thinking about, hey, what happened in that Marvel movie, or what happened, in that gaming session, or hey, I wonder what this person really thinks of me. Dragons are thinking about acquiring treasure and guarding their treasure, I think, more than a lot of other things.
That's their hobby.
So, like, hey, I wonder if I put an extra secret passage in here, or, what happens if I make a secret lair and keep the really good items out? And, every once in a while I'll go sleep on them, and maybe people won't find it, and I can go do this other thing, whatever.
Maybe. Or maybe they paint in their spare time. I don't know.
I mean, depending upon, how you want to play your dragon, anything is possible.
Do you have a favorite dragon?
So, most of the time, you got to look at the fact that your good dragons take a lot of work, your metallics, to use as an adversary. And I don't like to think that hard. So I tend to go.
Oh, that's easy. Just remove the alignment system.
Well, that works too.
But no, I don't care. Like, not so much not a favorite dragon to use, just a favorite dragon.
Okay. Visually, I like the blue. You and I are on opposite sides. I totally dig, this style.
The dunce cap. You like the dunce cap horn?
It's a cool unicorn horn, in my opinion. Lightning is awesome. It's not quite as common as fire.
Honestly, the blue used to be one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Until they changed the look. I don't like the dunce cap horn. Just me personally. I've always been fond of the green as well. So now I think I have to shift from blue green to probably green black.
So for me, it's blue and white. I'm fond of the more animalistic style of what the white represents, and thus it makes it a little bit easier because they aren't willing to go to as crazy a lengths. When you look at the ancient white stats, they are severely decreased. Much closer to that Tarrasque-esque style. But that means that you can offer them up as earlier challenges, and then you get the whole fun element of using a cold adventure, having them hide in the snow. You can do a lot of fun things with that angle of it. So.
Well, if you're going with the top of the food chain for the white dragon, it's not too bad. It's got an average intelligence and a 13 wisdom, 14 charisma. So it's not an idiot, right? It's not an animal at that point.
But it says that it's
smarter than most of the people I know, I think. So not you, D&D community. You guys are so much smarter.
Are you talking about in general, or are you looking at me, man?
General. So, I think you could do a lot with that, and if you're an ancient white dragon, you lived a very long time. So again, sometimes I think that doesn't get factored in. Like, even if you're not you don't have a super intellect, but you've been able to live for over 1,000 years, and everybody wants your hide and they want your treasure. You must have did something right. You can't stay lucky that long.
That is entirely true.
Yeah, so there's that. Yeah, but the blue dragon. So I used to really like the blue dragon in second, and also because they would just hang out underneath the sand and just pop up, like a purple worm, but it's a dragon. I like the black for the same reason, because they're in a great environment where they can just ambush.
Yeah, there's so many fun ways to play with all of that stuff, and I know when third edition put out the new art, where I know you were very much against the redesign, and it looks that they've kind of held close to those standards for the last couple of editions, but when you remove the alignment structure, when you remove color association, I think you have a lot more freedom and enjoyment as the GM to be able to say, hey, this doesn't necessarily correlate with anything. I want to have fun and make, this model or that model, and what does it mean? Um, and that's one of the things that I've done in the past is to strip away those ideas, and you can have pure dragons, that are legitimately accurate. That okay, well, if it's got red scales, it means this. But you can also have a red dragon that it doesn't breathe fire, but it breathes a heat source of another type. Perhaps it breathes radiant energy. It still burns, but it's not fire. What if it breathes magma? If it has this constant churning flame inside, and it chews on rocks on its in its lair, and that's how it grows its lair. It literally just chews through. Then when it needs to breathe, it hurls out this magma that clings and sticks to things like acid, but burns like fire.
It's a chinchilla because it can chew through anything but steel or glass. Uh, I also like it's been mentioned in the chat, and I had to go and look because I forgot the name. I was definitely influenced by Dragonlance when it came to dragons as well. You had the Kitty Ara's Dragon Sky, the blue dragon. Cyan Bloodbane was a green dragon. Yeah, so that was definitely a heavy influence because when I first started playing D&D, I was reading the Chronicles and all the different Dragonlance books, which dragons were very heavily featured in that series, and most of the character deaths that happened in those books were at the hands or claws, I should say, of dragons, because it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get heavily into those books. I was there was so much hype built up with that series that by the time I finally got around to it, I was more of a Forgotten Realms fan. I was like, I'm just not seeing this here. I'm gonna move on.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things like that. I mean, a lot so TSR had a lot of writers, and I will say even the writers that kind of went on to become really great writers, when they were writing for TSR, they were still young and early into their writing as authors, and TSR did not employ like a lot of like higher end, I would say, writers, and it was more like. Or I think that a lot of them were young, so a lot of them have gotten a lot better, and grown into like their style.
Right.
But like those books, to me, were like mental junk food. Right? I enjoyed them; they were fun to read. I ripped through a bunch of them, and also those writers produced a lot of books fast.
Oh, they did.
Now an author will write like a book a year, and it seemed like those people were putting out like 3. So. I think like some of the more prolific, like high end authors, it's like they cap out at 2, where it felt like they were probably shorter books too, and it just seemed like they would just churn them out like nobody's business, especially those Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance books.
Right. Yeah, you're talking about 250 to 300 page novel on average. And some authors, when you've got the idea, it's not hard to make that happen. That's certainly not me. I can't write like that, but
Not yet, you can't, and not with that attitude.
Brian had a really good comment. Whether you call it a collection or organization, but it likes the idea of a collection of chromatic dragons, almost like the pantheon of Greek gods translated into D&D, where each represents the epitome of their kind. I think that could be a world-shattering organization if they chose. But imagine the biggest best of each chromatic dragon meets whether it's once a year, even once a decade, to discuss what's going on in the world and how they're going to use their influence. They're chromatic dragons, so they're evil. So they would absolutely, like worry and fear about what the other dragons are doing outside of the meeting. But they might have a magic item that binds them to inaction against each other. at these meetings. I think there could be a lot of fun things to be able to do about this, and perhaps the campaign at some point in time, the party gets to scry in on one of these meetings. I think that would be kind of cool.
I know you always had wanted to run a Court of Worms, or not Court of Worms.
Council of Worms.
Council of Worms. Court of Worms is my nonsense.
I mean, that was definitely a thing back in the day. I'm not certain how I would go about doing something like that now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with fifth edition, I think it's a little bit easier to manage. I mean, third was really easy because there were legit rules, but like you could legitimately just tack class levels onto age categories, and then you play through some adventures, and then there's some downtime, and all right, the world, this has changed. All right, go up to the next age category, gain another level or two, and now we're off going to go do this thing here. Is a way that I push game to shove. That's what jumped into my head. But you definitely have to work and play with. Well, how does this function and how does that function? I'd have to play around with it. But that's certainly an idea that's worth considering for a short campaign.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a way to bring more of it in there, or you could do like a dry. I know like everyone wants to do, not everyone, but oftentimes, and we've been asked about the idea of doing a Dragon Rider campaign as well. I mean, it's a fun idea, but it's also weird and wonky, right? Because you have a dragon, which is like this awesome machine of destruction and primal forces, and then you got like a dude.
So I mean, I think the thing you have to look at there is you have to take more of a they're more drakes. Like if you look at literally the Vikings, the Dragon Riders, they're not, they have breath weapons, they have powers and abilities, but we're not talking about these vast monstrosities. You're talking about things that are large and huge, and every once in a while you see things that are gargantuan and colossal and what have you.
Colossal? What's that?
The big thing that was in charge.
No, I meant D&D terms. What's that?
I am sorry. I still correlate. What's colossal? This is colossal.
Oh, sure, Ted. Just go whipping your dragons out.
It's a conversation for another time, dude. So, like, you could stat up and say, okay, let's make some stats for things that are on the power level of a Weaver and Wyvern, and maybe a little bit higher, and that's what you're going to ride, and you find whatever your mount is going to be. This is the thing you've got. You bond to it. Don't let it die. Move on. And you can definitely have a lot of fun. But if you're talking about, hey, I want to jump on an adult dragon, I'm sorry, you're taking the scope out of the game, and if everybody has something that powerful, you're dealing with things where your mount is like 2 or 3 characters of power above yours. That's not really as much fun. You might as well just play a game of dragons.
Yeah, Oh, yeah. The guy, instead of having it where you're worried about your mount kicking, you're gonna kick, and your mount's gonna need a new rider. So yeah, it would feel a little bit like just playing playing the dragon instead of playing the person riding the dragon.
Which is why I think the Weaver and the Drake is definitely a little bit cooler, and then you could do the same kind of stuff like when you stretch beyond D&D and you look at the world of Avatar with the blue kitty people. Like they bond to horses and their own Weaver looking things. So like those are aspects that you could do. You just have to stat those particular creatures that fit the power level that you're looking for. There's nothing wrong with having a significantly powerful mount, just as long as you are more powerful than that mount. You are the rider. You're the one that should be in control, not, I'm along for the ride.
You're a pet or a familiar. Yeah, this is a. I'm Bob the Dragon, and this is Sir Henrik, my familiar.
So we're now at the halfway point. So I'm going to diverge for a moment. If you guys have any questions, whether it's related to dragons or not, you can go ahead and throw that up on the chat. If we happen to have anybody who was a player in my game last night, feel free to say hi, whatnot. I ran. It was my month to run the fan game, and I ran what will be our patron awards for August, which was definitely a lot of fun. Looking forward to getting feedback once that gets out into players' hands. But I had a pretty unique experience because I had 4 players, 4 different countries, 4 different time zones. So I had Dennis out in the UK, Aaron out in Italy, Michelle was from Australia, and then Kevin was over in Delaware, within driving distance of us.
Nobody's perfect.
It was really cool to be like, wow. I actually joked with Michelle, I'm like, hey, it's Monday morning here. Is the world still alive?
Yeah. No, it's not. I am playing from the end of the world.
Yeah, so I just thought that was a fun little element. They got to for our side of the world, we're dealing with summer and heat and what have you, and I ran a nice little cold adventure.
Nice, cool people off. Well, except for Michelle in Australia, because this is their winter, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, I was actually having that conversation earlier today. They do Christmas on the beach, so.
As you do.
As you do, and when you live in Australia.
Yeah. Well, when Santa comes along with his sled pulled by crocodiles and other things that can kill you.
Well, that's kind of what Australia is about, isn't it?
I think so, where everything tries to kill you.
It is still on my on my bucket list, though.
To get killed in Australia?
No, just to go to Australia.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have a bucket list of where I want to die. That would just be weird.
Oh, yeah.
That's a kick the bucket list.
Well, we've had a couple invitations to come out, so from different people. I'm sure at some point we will. When we do the Nerdarchy World Tour.
Yeah, that will hopefully happen someday. But if you are looking to actually game with Nerdarchy, as we do a monthly fan game, we take it in a rotation. Dave, Doug, and myself all take turns. Dave, you want to tell them how someone might be able to do so?
Well, we've got a couple of ways you can do it. One is you can sign up for our newsletter. In the description of all of our videos on the Nerdarchy regular channel, there is a link to the newsletter. You can just sign up for it, and then you'll after you confirm your subscription to the newsletter to make sure that we're not spamming people that don't want emails from us, you'll get another email, and in that there's another list you can jump on, and that we only use that list to pick people to play games with us. And you can just do that. That's free to sign up. And then the newsletter is kind of cool because we talk about all kinds of more of this stuff, and sometimes there's stuff in there that you can just drop right in your game, or maybe it's more like we talk more philosophy type stuff about the game and how to use things. But we usually have a bunch of different stuff. So that's one way. The other way is to just become a patron, and anyone who's a patron at any level, $1 and above, gets an entry. If you happen to sign up for the newsletter and get on the list that way, and then you sign up for and become a patron, then that just means your name will go into the hat twice, and then I don't know, I think then Ted reads tea leaves or something, and then he gets the names, and we invite those people to play.
I take the list of everyone from the newsletter, I take everyone from patron, put that into a spreadsheet so that I have it all numbered. I grab a random number generator. Typically, I have it spit out, 10 numbers. I put that in the order that it's given. We email all 10 people saying, "Hey, you get in." Typically, it's the first 5 people that respond. We allow game, but on average, out of those 10, I usually only get a response from 2 or 3. Sometimes I've gotten none. Um, so there's been times that we've gone back to the list. There's times that we literally throw it right out here to whoever's watching this chat of, "Hey, I've got an opening, for a game at such time. Let us know." We've gone to Discord, we've gone to Facebook, we've gone to a variety of different ways to fill those spots when they are indeed open. But I know I've emailed 25 people from the list and still didn't get 5 spots in a previous game. It's a while ago, which is why we then reach out and try to find people who are legitimately interested.
Yeah. So if you want to game in a one shot with us, and typically what we do is we run the rewards that are coming up too. So you become our guinea pigs, in essence, to see like what does this need? What did we get right? What did we get wrong? And then we can then take that information and use it to make the products better, and you get a sneak peek.
And yeah, that's the selling point. It's not so much about being the guinea pigs. It's getting the sneak peek, the early access to the materials that we're actually playing. This is kind of a new mentality. Previous months, previous iterations, we just ran whatever. There were definitely days where I'm like, all right, as Dave and I are both on the fly GMs, that I'm like, all right, what am I gonna run? What do I feel like today? And half hour before, I better come up with something. But I think both of us are confident enough that I can sit down at a table and run a game without really needing any advanced any real advanced story. So like it's a fun thing. So for me it was a little different. Like, all right, I need to read through these 8 pages and turn this into my style of adventure for the evening. It was a fun Arctic dungeon crawl, and players were a little scared and worried, and more so when they began to feel parts of their body going numb.
Hate when that happens. I hate when that happens.
So the other thing by becoming a patron is we have our monthly giveaway. So if you are interested in getting in on Patreon and getting the free chance to game with us, as well as a free chance to get stuff sent your way, that is a great way to do it. The next time we're going to announce the giveaway is next week. So real quick, from our friends over at WizKids, I've got Magic the Gathering Heroes of Dominaria, Marvel Strike Teams, and the Strike Teams expansion, Avengers Initiative. So all of that is in a box, ready to go. There's other.
Yeah, occasionally we end up with board game stuff as giveaways. Usually it tends to be D&D books, Pathfinder books, Starfinder books. Sometimes official stuff, sometimes third party. But we end up with a lot of it, and usually it's at least $50. Now you don't, Patreon is kind of like the easiest way to get into the giveaways. But you can also go to our website, and we have a section for contests and giveaways where you can go and download a form and mail it to us, and we will enter you in. You can only mail one at a time, so you can't like send us a stack of them all at once. Once per month.
One entry form per envelope, and I do take any of those, and add them to the list before I determine who the random winner is of the giveaway. Once that's announced, I email the winner, and I give them 2 weeks to respond. If I don't get a response, I pick a new name and try again. There have been a couple of times where I've gone through 3 and 4 names. It's been a little weird, but it's a fun way for us through us getting stuff from publishers and what have you, that we get to give back to you guys even more. So it's definitely a fun thing that I enjoy doing. Um, but that the address of where to mail it to is our PO box, which you can always send to. I check it probably once every week, and always the day that I'm going to pull out the next winner. So I'll be definitely for sure checking it next Monday.
So Michael Melbourne wants to know: do you need a special skill to skin a dragon? And if you don't have it, could I use conjure animals to get the critter to do it? So I would do it like if you have a tanner, someone has tanner skill with tanner's tools, leatherworking tools. Yeah, definitely that. I would probably allow a survival check, and dragons are more exotic, so I would just make it a higher DC. Animals don't know how to skin things; they just rip it apart and eat the stuff inside.
Well, if you cut it open, could you have the critter go inside and just eat the meat?
I guess you can command it to do that, but there's no guarantee they're not going to rip and shred and pull at the hide and damage it from the inside. That's not really what they do. Yeah, I would just take your leatherworking skill or survival check. If they happen to have both, I would give them advantage. Maybe not advantage, but lower the DC. Right. If they had leatherworking and is it Arcana for knowing about dragons?
Yes.
Yeah, so I would let them combine survival, leatherworking, and Arcana. And what I would do is, for each one of those skills, I might reduce the difficulty by 5 or 2 or whatever.
I would go 2, and you can always look at what is the challenge rating of the creature. That is a good place to really play with, because where things are, but the more you want to play around with things, you want this to be a significant reward. Skinning a massive dragon, Doug wants to know how long is it going to take. It could take a very long time, hours. If you want to do it properly, getting as much undamaged scale as you possibly can. But I mean, there are cultures that would use the leather, would use the scales, would use the bones, would eat the meat. But you also have to look at from the other side. I was gaming with somebody, and we talked about eating the dragon, and it's like, dude, dragons are like thinking creatures. Why would you eat a dragon? And I was like, I hadn't really thought about that.
Well, you do keep talking about this animalistic version, so.
So, I mean, some things are going to come down to, what does your character know versus what you know. So you definitely have a lot of things that you can take. But if you are stuck for a choice, using the CR as your base certainly works for me. Then you can modify it, up or down as you see fit. Adding in, as Dave says, the relevant skills as well.
Yeah, I feel like, first of all, I feel like it's an all-day project for the skin of Gargantuan Dragon, at the very least, depending on how much help you have and things like that. And, I would probably set the DC at, 25. And then that's why I'm like, got another skill? All right, we can lower it. You got another skill? We can lower it again. If you have someone who is somewhat skilled, not necessarily, all 3 skills, but it has at least one of them, then I would allow them to help you, and then you could get advantage, of course, to make it a little bit easier. But yeah, I think if you're used to skinning deer, and then you have a Gargantuan Dragon, that's a huge difference. Because it's going to be so much harder to work with that much creature, animal, monster, whatever you want to call it. Imagine you can't. How do you even roll it over, right? You need you might even need a team to tackle skinning that thing. You need block and tackle, and a virtual army. Just what if you need to roll it over? That's a lot of dragon.
That's it's one of those things. And I mean, if you look at, and I know some people don't have the stomach for watching this, but if you watch somebody field dress, a deer or something along those lines. Those things are hundreds of pounds. When you catch them at their biggest, so that's challenging. But when you're talking about something that is heavier than your car, thousands of pounds, like you're not just you know what, I'm just going to casually roll this over. Oh, it could be like an hour process of just moving the limb with the 4 or 5 people in the adventuring party, unless you're you know a titan using a variety of different spells just to lift up. I'm gonna cast enlarge and then enhance ability, and then I'm gonna cast Bigby's hand, and we're gonna move this leg. Like that's what it can take. So yeah.
Yeah, you know what I would, I mean, again, like you said, if you have the stomach for it, how you feel about these certain things, but like maybe like a moose. Like see someone field dress a moose, like that thing is, those things are gigantic as far as animals go. Like that, like they're Canadian kaiju. So
so I mean that's just one aspect. If you're gonna start taking apart a dragon, then that kind of goes into the whole secondary angle of, well, magic items are frequently made out of magical ingredients. What kind of ingredients does a dragon have beyond meat for whatever purpose, scale for making armors or decorations?
well, you're going to have a lot of options there, and I feel like in that regards, the dragons probably have more parts that you can dissect them for than real world creatures, right? Like, how do they create their breath weapon? That seems like that might be a good thing to grab for spell components or making magic items. Obviously, other creatures, we take their talons and their teeth and everything, but at this point, like the tooth is as big as you are. How do you get that back to town?
Teeth, talons, horns, all of those are great as adornments. Or oh well, what if I want to make a sword or a spear, or something carved from one of these things? That could be very interesting.
I'm not sure what you're adorning with dragon parts. I mean, like
buildings.
Okay, that makes sense. Buildings, ships, maybe a wagon. You want to pimp your wagon?
Imagine, imagine a vessel, like a sailing ship, that its sails are made out of the wings of a dragon. Its mast and rigging is made of dragon bones. You could definitely go all kinds of super creepy with some dragon hunting, whether it be pirates or adventurers that they are expanding upon their vessel through the slaughter of dragonfly.
Yeah, I imagine you're not going to be very popular among the dragon kin of the world.
But I mean, there's going to be all types. It's just something that popped into my head as you see the dragon wings unfurl. It's like, yeah, that could be a mast for sure. Why not?
They're talking about dragons as food, which just makes me think of the Flintstone cartoon. Like the brontosaurus ribs. No, dragons are not for eating. And whoever you were talking about are right. I mean, when you're talking about chowing down on a sentient creature, it gets a little murky. I mean, it's not cannibalism because it's a different species unless you're a dragonborn. Then like we're getting really close to home. Like I think like a dragonborn eating dragon would be like a person eating an ape. But yeah, there's definitely a morally gray area when you're doing that. I feel like there was an adventure like that where they were serving dragon or something. I don't know if it was something homebrew or something someone wrote, but it seems like it would be something that someone would write.
That's highly possible. I like Doug's comment. In this world, dragons are rare, with a side of vegetables and smashed potatoes. But I mean, I look at, when planning a character, who isn't all that exposed to magic and knowledge, they might not interact with dragons. They might not think about, you know, oh, is this something that is food, or, is it a thinking, reasoning being? That's a lot of meat. Is it a waste to just let it all go? The spoil. Do you do something? Do you not? Um, and I've played characters that have been on both sides. I'm like, okay, well, it's dead. Now what?
It definitely seems like it would be a taboo. Now, like lizard folk, the way they're written, I don't think they would mind as much. They might also eat party members if they happen to fall.
Well, I mean, you've got more. I hesitate to use the word, but savage. More tribal customs of the races of D&D, where it's not taboo. It is a dog eat dog world, so to speak, and there that's literal.
Especially if you're playing a null.
Especially if you're playing a null. You don't let things go to waste. That's built right into the lizard folks, racial ability with cunning artisan, that they get to make stuff, out of things. So
Bob the fighter's rib cage.
Well, I'm playing a lizard folk in an upcoming game, and I don't think I would be that crass. But from fallen monsters, like, there might be some interesting things to take away from that. And my lizard folk is definitely more on that middle ground, but I'm still not going to be like, well, sorry, the ranger or the druid died. Well, you know what? I've been meaning to look at that.
I was about to ask you what game, and I was like, oh, that
Yours.
game. I caught on eventually. I'm like, what game is Ted playing in without me? He's cheating on me. Cheating on me with another group.
I only do that Thursday nights.
Yeah, so, man, I feel like I'm all dragged out now.
Do you think this conversation is dragging on?
Maybe a little bit. But, I mean, I'm about to get into more dragging stuff anyway in the game that we're going to be playing coming up. We're not streaming it. It's just our home game if we were playing at our houses. But, Court of Worms is based on the idea that there's these celestial, almost godlike beings that rule this valley, and they are essentially dragons. They're like dragons plus, or, they wouldn't be, they would be. I think they would be a step above the ancients in the monster manual for sure. Right. So people aren't going to want to try and test them with them. And also, they have humanoid forms, right. With like all their clothing and stuff is kind of like accented and kind of like
when one of them is walking down the street.
Yeah, they're humanoid forms. I kind of describe them as being like these angelic elf-like creatures, only much, much taller.
So I'll be playing Skeggs, the lizard folk artificer, battlesmith, but Dave has allowed me to go in a alternate direction to tie more into, again, that cunning artisan. So all of my creations are more like arcane, worked off of what do I got? Leather workers tools, wood carvers tools. So I'll be working with that kind of stuff, with survival and nature, and he's willing to cut stuff open and see how they work, and planning to use the magical ingredients that are inherent in those magical creatures. I haven't really done the not good character in a while. Not evil, just neutral, but definitely rides that border pretty hard.
Yeah, I think we got, what do we got? We got one lizard folk, two Yanti, A human and a dragonborn.
The human's more the dragonborn's pet.
Just happens that way sometimes.
So I'm looking forward to that game.
Yeah, I see any construct thing you make. I see it more like just being more like bone golems than, instead of being made of steel and metal.
Yeah, bone attached to wood, leather. So like I'm still trying to piece together exactly what Bones looks like, but he's supposed to be, you either got, bipedal or quadrupedal, and I'm looking to go more like, I'm based off more of a, spider or a basilisk. So I'm gonna have some fun, and once I get the good picture in my head, then I might try to see if I might make the mini, because I've got a pile of skeleton parts from dollar store junk that I could easily farm, and if things go awry, chuck it and start over.
Bone Velociraptor.
Well, I'm thinking more like your typical medium-sized lizard, so something that's 4 to 5 feet long, not tall. It's not a riding thing.
Yeah, no, I don't see it as being a right thing anyway. And also, they have some really small raptors as well. They go in a lot of different sizes. But everything is more lizardy here in the Vale. So that's why I was thinking that there's definitely dinosaurs in this valley as well.
Nice.
If we're gonna go amphibian and reptile, we might as well go all the way.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a very, very fun game.
Instead of dogs, they have monitor lizards. Or maybe even drakes.
Yeah, that could be the norm. And you don't have the pet dog or the pet cat. You've got.
That's what your pet eats.
You could have the different types of lizards and what have you. I think it could be a lot of fun. Maybe you don't ride horses. Maybe you ride a raptor style thing. Maybe you ride a giant lizard. Maybe there's ones that are big enough that multiple people get on, and it kind of like snakes through the streets. You have a lot of fun with how you make this more draconian city.
Yeah, I mean that stuff's probably going to be in there anyway. I'll look at drakes and giant lizards and that stuff. Giant lizards are probably their normal pack animals that they'll use. We do have our dranthers.
Oh, that's true, the dranthers.
So like kind of like in our world, like the idea is the dragons were all kind of swept away and were banished from the world, except for a couple like exceptions, this is one of them where the Vale they were able to separate themselves so that from the rest of the world, so they didn't get sucked into where the other dragons got sent, and kind of remained here in secret. And in the meantime, they built their own kind of like civilization up around it. But one of the side effects was, they can't produce dragons in the normal way anymore. And when they lay their eggs, instead of producing dragons, they produce kobolds and dragonborn from them. And occasionally one of the kobolds can ascend to be to dragonhood and become a wormling. But it's super rare, so it's a different take and like for a way for us to elevate dragons, the status in our world in this section. But who knows? That's not to say there might not be some other dragons about, or even maybe dragons that are there but hiding, in plain sight, that are able to take on humanoid forms and mingle with the rest of the population.
And that's always something that I loved about the freedom of giving dragons a little bit more power. Of like, oh well, can they take on a human shape? Do they have some kind of spell casting capabilities? Can they do both? I think those things are more the dragons that I'm used to using.
Yeah.
Because, if you always look like this, 30 to 50 foot tall, giant monstrosity, sometimes it's harder to get your point across.
True. Sometimes you need a little more subtlety in the things that you do. But it's that time, Ted.
Indeed. So if you happen to, still be around, don't forget to check us out tomorrow night for the next session of Those Bastards.
Yeah, what is that? Session 3.
Session 3, I guess. Technically session 4 for us, or 5, and I forget which at this point in time.
Yeah.
But the game that we originally created as the brothers game, the siblings game. We're all half siblings. It is awesome. We're ridiculous. And we're not very intelligent. So
that all of those things you said are true. And then on Thursday, I'll be playing in the Daubers game, which is a mix of old dudes and teens, pretty much, across the board, which is also a lot of fun. And it's Daubers is its own little world where we're all playing people that are 20 inches or smaller for the most part. Which has been fun so far. So you can check those out. And as always, we have the live chats. So with that, until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.